Goedemiddag, mijn naam is Annemarie Toebosch. I will continue in English. I'm talking to you from my office at the University of Michigan, where I run the fastest growing Dutch program in the United States. We teach language and culture here, and the core of our curriculum is our race and ethnicity education. This core fits with the mission of my institution. I just finished teaching 100 students about Anne Frank and her legacy. What my students do is they look at the diary as a human rights document, and in parts of the course they hold it up against human rights violations in Dutch and American history as it relates to racism in society today. NIOD and people associated with NIOD have a solid stamp on this course and on our program. My students visit the NIOD website for information. I send them there to do their research all the time. They read articles by David Barnau, who was also a lecturer in this program. They read Harry Pape, several articles by him. And they read articles by Hondius, who has worked in collaborations with NIOD, and whom I'm talking to about a visit possibly to this campus to talk about Dutch slavery in the United States. And Evelien Gans would have been our memorial lecturer here 3 months ago. And when I heard that NIOD was involved in this 45-49 research study, my heart sank right through this office floor. I do not know how to reconcile this. Here is a national genocide center that has decided to put itself shoulder to shoulder with, as I understand from the people in the room with you today, with a research institute under the Dutch Ministry of Defense, a research institute that consults the Dutch state as it defends itself against war crimes, claims of war crimes. As we say in the United States, this does not pass the smell test. But that is not even my biggest concern. I have read NIOD's defense of this research on their website in a description of the year in review at Pakhuis de Zwijger. And where is colonialism in this? Where is colonialism? Piet Hagen and 350 years of colonial oppression are buried somewhere down at the end of a paragraph. And this is not okay. For a national genocide center, 350 years of rape, torture, exploitation, and slavery should be the beginning, the middle, and the end of your research. It should not be a side note, it should not be an afterthought. And anything less than that is a whitewashing of history. Gans and Hondius were very clear and brave about this. Nivellering, the Dutch word nivellering, leveling. We cannot level the suffering of Jews in a genocide with the suffering of the non-Jewish Dutch in World War II. And here is NIOD in a glaring case of double standard, signing its name under a study that in its very conception has a cultural relativistic view of human rights violations. It's an attitude of let's look at 45-49 from all sides. Let's look at it from all perspectives, all sides. And I've heard this before, not long ago. I heard this attitude from my current president, who after Charlottesville, seeing neo-Nazis walk down the streets in Charlottesville, said there were bad parties on both sides, bad people on both sides. In Indonesia, there were no bad people on both sides. There was one bad party on one side, and the rest fell out from this. Because 45-49 is not the story of 45-49, it's the story of 350 years of oppression and human rights violations. And human rights are absolute. They cannot be negotiated in the Dutch polder. They are, in their definition, non-negotiable. And so it's very troubling that a genocide center, which is a hop and a skip away from the International Court, the International Criminal Court in The Hague, has apparently found a way to look past this. And so my question is specifically for NIOD. How do I explain NIOD in a human rights curriculum? This coming week when I step into class and my students and I read Barnau together. I mean, this is not, I'm not making a political statement here. I have no agenda. I am genuinely stuck here. My students implicitly trust the research direction I send them in, the websites I send them to, and I do not know how to explain this. I do not know how to explain NIOD's role in this research, and so I don't know how NIOD knows how to explain this to the Netherlands, to the world. And so I hope that NIOD has a moment van bezinning, a moment of reflection today in this meeting, and clearly, unequivocally distances itself from any cultural relativism in the face of oppression. And so I ask NIOD that it advocate for the inclusion of all important court documents of 45-49 cases against the Dutch state. Sit down with Jeffrey Pondard, sit down with Lisbeth Zegveld, find the most important documents and include them in the write-up of this study. I say that also because the truth will out, documents will come to light. And NIOD knows this. NIOD understands what happens when you bury documents such as documents about a ship called the Van Imhoff. You know what I'm talking about. And so that's one question I have for you. The other question I have for NIOD is that you advocate for an independent write-up of the conclusion of this research, not by one of the 3 research institutes that's signed on the dotted line here, but by an independent institution. A write-up, a conclusion that 350 years of oppression deserves. Because you are the Genocide Center. Thank you.